Well, hey everybody, my name is Brady Lichtenberg. I'm a wildlife biologist with Missouri Department of Conservation, as well as the area manager of Eagle Bluffs Conservation Area. So Eagle Bluffs is one of 15 intensively managed wetlands that the Conservation Department owns and manages across the state. Just south of town, if you don't know where it is, down by the Big Burr Oak is very nearby. So if you know where that is, then you've likely driven right past Eagle Bluffs. So basically, hopefully you just watched Carl Gerhardt's documentary about the kind of the history behind how Eagle Bluffs came to be, and the work that they did with the city and the surrounding constituents and landowners and people that would be impacted by everything going on in that era. And now you know why Eagle Bluffs is here. You learned in that video that we take on effluent water, which is the treated water that goes down everybody's drain in the city of Columbia, that is then chemically treated, and then it goes through 4 wetland cells. Those 4 cells are here, 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 and here, and then it comes on a pipe through here underground and then comes onto Eagle Bluffs. And once the water comes onto Eagle Bluffs, it goes down into the distribution channel, and then from there we can disperse it out into all of our different wetland management units.
Management in action.
Proof that we do work on a daily basis. So, yeah, we have 17 intensively managed wetland units here. All of those are surrounded by levees, so that we can manage water levels differently in different pools. The reasons that we do that, there's a lot of reasons, but as the year goes on, our management goals change, as well as the management actions that we take to try to achieve those goals. So, for example, we start the year in January. There's water spread out everywhere over the area. We call it full pool. We can't really take on much more water without running water over levees. So from that point through the spring, we're slowly dropping water levels in a process called moist soil management. In a nutshell, moist soil management is manipulating water levels in a way that encourages the growth of naturally occurring native vegetation that produces food as well as structure that the wildlife that use these areas need in order to succeed. So as the year goes on, we're slowly dropping water levels. All of these open moist soil units are greening up as the spring goes on and it warms up. And all that lush green out there, the vast majority of that stuff is not things that we have planted. That's seeds that come up, they're naturally occurring, they're in the seed bed, they germinate because of the conditions that we provide for them. So, because all of these pools are surrounded by levees and we can manage water levels differently, like for example we can keep 10 at full pool for a long time and we can dry 11 out really early. By doing different drawdown timings and drying things out or keeping things wet longer, the plant community responds in different ways. So we do that to promote more diversity across the area. More diversity in the plant communities typically translates directly to more diversity in the wildlife that are using the area. So we're here at one of our management units, and as you can see, we got the tractor in the background. He's doing some spraying. He's spraying herbicide. One of the main things that we have to do out here is a lot of nuisance species, invasive species control. So he has the sprayer on the back of the tractor full of herbicide. It's a selective herbicide. It doesn't kill everything. It really only kills the bad plants that we're targeting, and then leaves the leaves the beneficial moist soil species out there that they can come back through it and not be affected at all by the herbicide that he's using. One of the main things that we spend a lot of time on during the growing season is monitoring our wetland units, making sure that the good plants that we want out there are growing and thriving, and make sure that the bad guys, the nuisance species that we don't want out there, aren't taking over. And that's a huge part of my job. I spend a lot of time walking around, driving through wetland units just like this, checking out what the plant species looks like. And in this case, we got a lot of cocklebur out there, so he's spraying a herbicide that's going to kill the cocklebur, and it's going to leave all the native grasses to be just fine, and they'll thrive and really take off after that competition's removed. Some of the other ones that we battle out here, there's some non-native asters that we have trouble with in our wetland management units. We also have some trouble in some places with cattails and bulrush. Those are both native species, and they are beneficial in the right place at the right density, but there are times where they get super aggressive and they start to take over areas. They choke everything out. They get too dense for any kind of birds to use them, or really any kind of wildlife to benefit from them. And at that point, then we got to get in there and do something about it. We can make mechanical changes to the landscape, like disking or mowing. We can also get out there with herbicide and spray the things. We do a little bit of everything across the area. It really just depends on the site and what our end goal is, basically, for trying to get the management unit shaped up how we want it to look. Alright, so we're here at another wetland management unit. As you can see behind me, this is not a moist soil unit. This is one of our ag units. We have 2 permittee farmers that we actually rent some of the ground here on Eagle Bluffs out to. They basically are just your typical farmer. They come in, they plant corn and soybeans, and they do that for a living. They make a profit off of the area that they rent on Eagle Bluffs, and it's kind of the same way on a lot of conservation areas. We do that for several reasons here on Eagle Bluffs. One reason is to keep open areas open. The farming practices that these guys use to grow their crops keeps open areas open and prevents things like shrubs and cottonwood trees and woody vegetation from encroaching and taking over, and just keeps it open and really early successional as far as the plant community goes. Another reason we do that is in their contracts that we have with the farmers, they have to leave 30% of their crops standing for wildlife. So 30% of the corn that they have planted on the area will be left standing. Their other 70% will be harvested by our farmers and then sold, and they keep that money, of course. But the 30% that we leave standing, we leave that in very strategic ways in the lowest elevation in the pools, so that when we flood it up, waterfowl during the fall and winter migration, they can feed on that standing corn. Now, if there's any duck hunters in the class, they will agree with me, I'm thinking, that corn is a very highly attractive food source for waterfowl. Most of our duck hunters that come in, their first question is, where's the flooded corn? I want to go there, that kind of thing. The issue with flooded corn, and the reason that we don't have 100% of Eagle Bluffs flooded acres planted and left in standing corn, is that it's not overly nutritious to migrating waterfowl. Our main goal here on Eagle Bluffs is to provide habitat and food and a resting place for waterfowl that are on their fall and spring migrations, give them a place to stop, a place to rest, a place to refuel, and to build up the fat and energy reserves that they need to make a successful migration, both in the fall when they're headed south, and then in the spring when they're headed back north. And then ideally in the spring they get back up to the nesting grounds and they're in a really good body condition and they have a successful nest year and raise a bunch of ducklings. That's what we want. So corn in itself, while it is highly attractive to waterfowl, they love it, they come into it. It's sometimes, if you get the right water levels and the right conditions, it's like you got a giant magnet just sucking all the ducks and geese into it. But that said, it does have the drawback of lacking the nutrition that the moist soil management, those wetland units where we grow the native vegetation and attract all the native bugs that die in the water and that the waterfowl can feed on the seeds from those, and the bugs as well, that provides much more of a whole diet, balanced diet, and helps them build up a more long-lasting fat reserves for their migrations. So a little fun fact about feeding corn to wildlife, waterfowl in general. There was a study done a couple years ago that every day they fed a duck corn, and that was the only thing they fed it for several days, and it lived less than 2 weeks whenever it didn't have the balanced, diverse diet. All it got was corn, and that's kind of just another little adage that we can keep in the back of our minds, that while it is highly attractive and ducks seem to love it, it's more like if you and I were to go out and eat candy bars and hot dogs every day, while that stuff sure does taste good, it's not going to be good for you, and that'll wear on you pretty quick. We may not die in 2 weeks after doing that, but the ducks, obviously, that study proved that they need a lot more diversity in their diet than just straight solid grain that the corn would produce. Another aspect to the reasons that we have a balance of native vegetation versus agricultural type vegetation like corn and soybeans is kind of pins into the different area users that enjoy Eagle Bluffs. The two main area user groups that are out here the most are non-consumptive users, which would be wildlife viewers, bird watchers, bird photographers, hikers, dog walkers, that kind of thing. The people that come out here just want to see nature and enjoy nature just through viewing it or taking pictures or enjoying it with their families and that kind of thing. The other side of the spectrum are the consumptive users, or the fishermen, the hunters. We have deer hunters, rabbit hunters, waterfowl hunters, of course. So while the waterfowl hunters and deer hunters, they tend to really favor the agricultural production. Waterfowl hunters love the flooded corn. Deer hunters love hunting over soybeans and that kind of thing. It doesn't really attract a lot of wildlife to the wildlife viewers or wildlife photographers, that kind of thing. It doesn't do much for them. The folks that want to come out here and take pictures of the really diverse birds during our spring and fall bird migrations, they're not getting much out of these corn and soybean fields. So that's just another reason that we have to kind of play middleman and you know, maintain a delicate balance between making sure that we're not over favoring the hunters versus over favoring the bird watchers. We do our very best to provide a little bit of everything for not only all the wildlife species that are going to be out here and using Eagle Bluffs, but all the people that come to enjoy those wildlife species. Alright, so we're here out on Eagle Bluffs now. This is right where all the city effluent water, as well as the water that we would pump out of the river, comes onto the area. So we call this area behind us the distribution channel. It's pretty aptly named because we use it to channel water through the middle of the area and then distribute it to all the other pools as we feel necessary. So this water coming out right now is all treated city effluent water. It's been treated chemically, and then it's gone through the 4 different wetland pools with all the cattails in it to draw out all the nutrients that it can there. And now it's coming onto Eagle Bluffs to get a final polish or a tertiary treatment to clean up the water before it either soaks into the ground or we discharge it to either Pershing Creek or the Missouri River. The vast majority of the water that we get from the city goes all the way through Eagle Bluffs rather than just being diverted and kicked straight out to the river or dumped right into Pershing Creek. So we take on as much as we can, let the plants and soil microbes and that kind of thing clean up all the other extra nutrients and bacteria and that kind of thing that's in the water, and then it either soaks into the ground or we let it out to the river at that point. One thing that this is a good example of as well is the different management that we do across the area. As you can see, there's quite a bit of water out here right now. Other portions of Eagle Bluffs are completely bone dry and full of green vegetation. So it's just because that we try to provide as much habitat and life history needs for as many species as we possibly can here on Eagle Bluffs. That's everything from fish to amphibians to reptiles, all the way up to big game, as well as, of course, migrating birds, water birds specifically. If I had to choose, I would say that we probably do the most to benefit migratory birds, especially migratory water birds, that being not only waterfowl but also wading birds, secretive marsh birds, and shorebirds. So we'll go to a spot here in a little bit that has some good open mud flats. That kind of shows you what we're trying to provide right now for migrating shorebirds. I know it feels like we're in the dead of summer, but fall migration for shorebirds is really ramping up right now. We got quite a bit of diversity as far as shorebirds goes on the area right now. I'm not sure if the camera will be able to see it or not, but we'll sure try to get to a spot where we can put that on display. Let's see.
Could be hard to see now, but I think there's a great blue heron way over there.
Yeah. Yep, those wading birds, they kind of stick around for the majority of the year. We do pick up more as their migrations kind of intensify as well. But they're a super common one around the area for the majority of the year.
So this is controlled by that big structure up there.
Yeah, that's what we call the junction box. That is basically just a block building that's full of different valves and water control structures that we can open and close to send water to different parts of the area as we see fit. Yeah, we're doing, like I kind of touched on, we're doing a lot of different styles of management across the whole area, and because of that, the goal there is to provide different habitat in different places to benefit different species. Like we'll leave some places a little bit more wet, and they'll come up with cattails and buttonbush and more perennial type vegetation that stands a little taller. We call that emergent marsh vegetation or emergent marsh type wetland, and that benefits the wading birds as well as fish and amphibians, but also secretive marsh birds, bitterns and rails and sora and that kind of thing. There's a whole lot of knowledge gap there with secretive marsh birds, so we do our best to provide the habitat, the standing structure, emergent marsh, reeds and cattails and things where they can hide and nest and thrive here on Eagle Bluffs.
So I guess we have to talk about the connection between this flow and everybody in Columbia flushing their toilets.
Yep. Yep. If you turn your water on, take a shower, wash your hands, flush your toilet, any of that stuff, that's where this water eventually ends up. So you're not only taking care of business at your house, but you're also benefiting wildlife here just south of Columbia. If we had to pump all this water to use it for our habitat management, it would be incredibly expensive, but instead we have an awesome partnership with the city where we get a ton of free water that we can use to provide habitat. We can use to irrigate moist soil if we're getting in a drought spell, kind of like we did in July. We hit a really dry spell, so we used all this water and poured it onto moist soil units, and it really irrigated those and attracted more insects and put a bigger seed head on those moist soil plants. So we definitely use it to the benefit of the wildlife out here.
And so how much did you say that the flow tends to increase once the students come back in the fall?
It's somewhere in the range of an additional 4 million gallons a day on average. Typically during the summer, unless we just got a great big rainstorm or something, we're getting around 8 to 10 million gallons a day from the city, and whenever students are back, we're getting in the range of 12 to 14 on average. But we can get all the way up to around 40 million gallons a day, which is a whole lot of water, and it gives us a lot to think about on where we can possibly send all that water without drowning everything out. So while it is a huge benefit to be able to have water all year long, it can be kind of a pain and a headache at times whenever they're sending you a ton of water whenever you just got a big rainstorm and the river's high, so you can't send all of it out to the river. It can become a little bit of a puzzle to try and fit together, but all in all, it's definitely an awesome deal for us.
So while we were talking, it just kind of shut off.
Yeah, so at the city, at the last water treatment cell that they have pumps that are set on an automatic float, so that when water levels in that unit get to a certain level, it kicks on a pump and it sends water to us for a while, and then it drops water back down to it and it shuts the pumps off. So that's an automated system that it really takes care of their water level management, and it makes sure that we're getting a pretty steady amount of water at all times. It would be a huge pain for us if they were sending us 50 million gallons one day and then sending us 0 for the next week and then another 20 million the next day, and that would not give us the opportunity to make really fine-tuned changes to the water levels. We would be plumb full of water one day and then we'd be bone dry in 2 days, and it would not benefit the wildlife or really any of our management strategies that we try to pull off out here if that were the case. Alright, so we are here at our pump site. This is the Missouri River behind us. So in addition to the water that we receive from the city of Columbia to kind of further treat their effluent water, we can also draw water out of the river using these 2 pumps. The pumps are underground. You probably won't be able to see them really well, but basically they run on electricity and they draw water up out of the river and then pour it onto Eagle Bluffs Conservation Area. So basically the only time of year that we use these pumps is whenever we're really trying to flood up for fall migration, trying to put a bunch of water on the area. For the majority of the year, all the water that you see on Eagle Bluffs is just the city effluent water that we get for free from the city. But we also do have the ability to draw water out of the river and kind of supplement that the city effluent water. While we're running these pumps, each one runs on 3-phase electricity, and which means it's a whole lot of current coming through all at once. And it's about $150 a day to run one pump. So when we have both pumps running, $300 a day. That adds up really fast. That ends up being a large chunk of our budget spent just on flooding the area. So as you can imagine, Conservation Department is pretty strict on making sure that our intensively managed wetlands like Eagle Bluffs are in the right locations, because we're going to be spending a lot of money on these areas to manage them and make sure that the wetland habitat is still on the landscape, but also want to make sure that they're getting the best bang for their buck, because everything we do basically, the costs sure add up. Between running $300 a day worth of pumps, a whole lot of herbicide and labor hours, getting the area ready for all the different management activities that we do, it sure can be expensive. So, but yeah, during the majority of the year, we're getting most of our water from the city, but we can supplement that and really triple the amount of water that we're getting onto the area with these 2 pumps that draw water out of the Missouri River.
Pump 1, you can tell because it's labeled number 1, and that's all we have open right now. But we can take a look down in there. Not sure how much you'll be able to see.
Yeah, that pump is way down there underwater at the bottom of that big pipe. So it basically sucks water out of the river and then it spills over the top of that pipe, and then from there spills into another pipe that runs onto Eagle Bluffs. And then from there we can divert it and open and close different structures and valves as we see fit to send it to the right location.
And since you guys didn't drive here, just to orient you, so that obviously is the Missouri River right there. So it gets pumped into here, and then behind us, if you broke through those woods, that's where the moist soil units and the rest of the area are.
So we're here at a water control structure. We have a ton of these out in the area, somewhere in the range of 80. These are our way of manipulating water levels from management unit to management unit. So right here is basically a pipe that goes under the levee, and then on the end of it just a big slide valve that we open and close. So this stem, if it were closed, the stem would be way down here, but we've got a special tool we put on the end of here and crank to open it up or close it. So, you know, if you want more water flowing through there, you open it up more. Want less, you close it down. As you can see, we got a lot of water flowing through here right now. It's all churning up really good. These are kind of interesting places. You always see, because there's moving water, it attracts a lot of fish to it, and because of that you always see northern water snakes basking on the edges of these water control structures. I think we probably scared them off for now, but so you're gonna have to just take my word for it on that one. But these are spread out all over Eagle Bluffs, and these are basically our lifeline and way to send water from point A to point B and accomplish whatever management tool or whatever management we're trying to make happen.
So, just to orient you guys, so do you know which pool this is?
We call this Shoveler Ditch. Just over here to the left is pool 10,
Okay.
and this is pool 11, and then right behind us is the distribution channel where the water's flowing from.
Okay, so if you guys, I gave you guys a PDF of the area, so you can kind of orient based on the pools there. So, the distribution channel, which is where the effluent comes from, we talked about earlier, that's it there. So, it's able to flow under this levee, and then here's where we can control how much of that water floods into the pools here.
Exactly. Yep, and you can adjust these. You can open them a ½ inch at a time to really make fine-tune adjustments on water levels. That's something that we are really focusing on right now. Because shorebird migration is going on, they need open mud flats, which means in the areas that we have our biggest open mud flats, the water may only be 6 inches deep in the very deepest spots, all the way up to, you know, ½ a centimeter deep, right where the shorebirds are hanging out. So if you crank this open 6 inches, then every bit of that area would be underwater the next morning, and then there'd be no more shorebird habitat out there. Or if you shut her way down, well, then it'd be bone dry the next day. So these screw gates are nice. It really gives us a chance to really fine tune the amount of water that we're sending from point A to point B, and really get particular on it. I spend a ton of my time, probably half of my time or better out here, simply monitoring water levels. There's more of that during springtime and fall flood up, but I mean, at least 3 times a week I'm out here checking various water levels, making sure things aren't dropping out too fast or flooding up too fast. Basically, we're trying to mimic historically what the Missouri River would have done, and that was not changing water levels by 10 feet at a time each and every day. It was very gradual changes, and everything happened really slowly before the river was channelized and turned into what it is now. So we kind of just try to mimic that, and these water control structures are the answer to how we can make that happen.
Ready.
All right, so we're here at one of our moist soil units out on Eagle Bluffs. Just wanted to give you an example of some of the native vegetation that comes up purely from water level regulation. So all of this green that's out here, that's up here close, all of that is naturally occurring. All these seeds were in the seed bed. They germinated on their own purely because of the timing of when we pulled water off the area and when we dried it out. So some examples here. This is an amaranth species. I think it's water hemp. You all may have heard about this one. It's really problematic in ag crop production. It's glyphosate resistant, so Roundup won't kill it anymore. So because of that, it's really problematic for farmers. Out here, as you can see, these are small individuals, but a great big one puts on a seed head that's just absolutely huge. They can put on millions of seeds on one plant. One water hemp plant puts on, a really big one will put on millions of seeds. And all of those seeds are very nutritious and beneficial to migrating water birds, especially small ducks, puddle ducks, teal, and gadwall, and that kind of thing. They will absolutely tear these up. So another one we have here, this is a wild millet. This one's called barnyard grass. Once again, naturally occurring. You can see it puts on a nice big seed head. Once it matures, it'll turn brown and those seeds will drop off of there. And then once we flood it up, the seeds will be floating in the water and ripe for the taking for all the waterfowl that are out there. This one here is a broadleaf. This is called smartweed. It doesn't put on much of a seed head. A mature plant will have a little flower up top this time of year usually, and then after that it does produce seeds, of course. But the main beneficial aspect to this is that it kind of grows in clumps. There will be a clump of smartweed, and in that it provides an excellent structure for insects and invertebrates. So it's really attractive to the food sources for the waterfowl that provide the proteins that they need. Whereas most of the grasses provide a good seed, most of the broadleafs provide the structure that really attracts a lot of insects. If I'll quit talking for a second, you can just hear that this whole field is absolutely, it feels like alive. You can feel that there is just absolutely insects and invertebrates everywhere out there just singing and having a good time and carrying on, and you can tell they're thriving out there. That's partially in, this guy's partially responsible for that. This one is, I'm fairly certain it's called goosegrass. This is a small individual, but it's just happened to be one that I found up close to the parking lot. Usually it'll put on a seed head that's about twice the size of this, and it has a bunch of tiny little seeds on there. So once again, once this matures, it'll shatter, the seeds will fall down, fall into the water, we flood it up, the seeds will float and then be right there on the top of the water for any kind of bird or animal that wants to eat those. This is another, this is a species of panic grass. Once again, it's very similar to that goosegrass. It's got a lot of little bitty seeds on there. You know, one plant produces a couple hundred seeds, as you can see, so you add those up across several hundred acres and you got a lot of food out there for wildlife. And not only is it a lot of food, it's a lot of diverse food that provides all the fatty acids and the carbohydrates and the proteins and everything that these waterfowl really need to make their migration. Kind of on a side note, if you pan over here, you see a patch of standing corn. That is stuff that our staff did plant. That kind of is something that we do to benefit waterfowl hunters. It gives waterfowl hunters a place to hide. Like I mentioned earlier, waterfowl hunters love hunting in standing corn. So it just it makes them happy to hunt in standing corn, as well as, of course, that corn is producing ears to give the waterfowl a little bit of something extra, something different to eat on while they're out here too. Also highly attractive, of course. So the timing of this, like I mentioned earlier, we start the year with everything at full pool, full of water, and then we slowly draw water off of it during the spring. It greens up and flourishes throughout the summer. Into the summer, of course, it looks like this. And then towards the, once we get rolling into fall, here before too long in the next few weeks, we will mow some of this standing stuff down. Mowing it down just kind of scatters the seed everywhere too, so it's not like we're mowing it down and wasting all that these plants have produced. But we'll mow that down, and then we'll slowly start adding water to it. So as water levels bump up, and it makes basically more and more of the pool accessible and open for waterfowl to feed in. We could just dump a ton of water on this without mowing it down, but then it's not as attractive to waterfowl or easily used as it would be if we mowed down some patches to give them a place to land, and then once they've landed, then they can kind of nestle their way into the standing vegetation and eat all the insects and the seed heads that are on the still standing stuff as well.
So actual nutritious food for the duck, and then the corn is just junk food.
Yep, it's highly attractive. I mean, I don't want people to think that corn is horrible for ducks. They kind of know when they've had their fill of corn, and they're not just going to absolutely gorge themselves on it and kill themselves out here and just eat corn. It is packed full of carbohydrates. So whenever we get really cold weather snaps, if they need some quick, fast, easy energy, they can eat on corn for a couple hours and fill up. And that's a lot of quick, easy energy. Now, like I mentioned earlier, if they were to do that every day, they'd be in trouble. But it really helps get waterfowl through their migrations. It is a good food source. It just can't be the only food source for them.
Yep.
All right, so we're here in pool 14 now, is another one of our moist soil units. If we look around here, you'll see that there's nothing but native vegetation growing out here now. Out here we have really shallow water, once again because the shorebird migration is getting ready to peak. So we're providing those open mud flats, which draws in a lot of different microorganisms and bugs and biofilms and that kind of thing that the shorebirds actually feed on this time of year while they are headed south for the winter. I don't know if you'll be able to see them in the camera there, but there are quite a few different shorebirds out there. It's pretty species diverse right now. I'm by no means an expert at shorebird identification, but I've been watching the different eBird and the MoBirds listserv, and there's been quite a few different species that have been ID'd out here in these past few days. So this is one of the bird watchers' favorite spots to come this time of year, just because it's really open and kind of sprawling. It provides a lot of open habitat for the shorebirds. It draws them in and kind of concentrates them to this part of the area. Also, you may be able to see some ducks out there. This time of the year we have wood ducks and blue-winged teal are just now starting to show up on the area. There's some of both out there right now. I think I saw a couple northern shovelers out there as well the other day. So we're starting in on fall waterfowl migration already too. So it's an exciting time of year for wildlife enthusiasts of all kinds. So one thing that's special about this part of the area is this is one of our refuge pools. So from October 15th through the end of prescribed goose season, which is usually early February, that nobody is allowed in these refuge pools for any reason at all. Even our staff try our very best to stay out of here, other than twice a week we check water levels back here just to make sure things are going as planned, we're not flooding too much or it's not drying out on us, as well as once every 2 weeks we do a waterfowl count. So that's the only reasons that we drive out to these refuge pools. Other than that, they are totally undisturbed and protected by law here in Missouri. So if you're caught out in a refuge pool while it is in effect, you're probably going to get a ticket. It's really important for our waterfowl to have a place where they can come and truly rest and not be stressed out. They can feed, rest, and refuel for their ongoing migration. So leading into that, piggyback off of that into the balance between keeping the waterfowl hunters happy at the same time as keeping the bird watchers happy. Waterfowl hunters obviously want to hunt waterfowl when there's waterfowl here. Bird watchers obviously want to see waterfowl when there's waterfowl here. You can't exactly do the same thing in the same locations at the same time. So for that reason, during hunting hours, the only people that are allowed in the hunt pools are waterfowl hunters that went through our morning draw process and have a daily hunt tag. I'll kind of explain that. I skimmed over that earlier. Every morning during duck season, anybody who wants to try and waterfowl hunt that day comes out, draws a number out of a box, and that number tells you not only if you do get to hunt that day or if you have to go back home, or if you do get to hunt, it tells you the order that you get to pick your spot in. We also have some spots allocated through an online reservation system, so that basically guarantees some folks a hunt for that day, but other folks that want to chance it and come in and try and draw in, they have that opportunity as well. So if you want to waterfowl hunt during waterfowl season out here at Eagle Bluffs, that's the process you have to go through. Of course, that's going to be different this year with COVID going on and everything. They're kind of nailing down the final plans for that now. But on the typical year, that's how it would work. Once again, these pools, nobody is allowed in them after October 15th. They're refuge. Nobody's allowed in them. We try not to come back here. It just gives them a nice big area where all the wildlife that are migrating through can rest and relax and not be stressed out by people driving by or people shooting at them or really anything that goes on the other parts of the area. So it's a delicate balance between providing wildlife viewing, hunting opportunities, as well as providing making sure we provide what the wildlife species actually really need in order to be successful on the area. So that's just another aspect of, we try to do a little bit of everything across the whole area and make the most of the little over 4,000 acres that we have to provide here for the wildlife. So one other kind of series of projects that we have going on here at Eagle Bluffs are various species monitoring projects that we do. during early summer, it's usually third week of June is when we do it. We time it when the Canada geese are molting their flight feathers. We will kind of corral them into a big net style trap, and we will take some data off of them, age and sex them, and put a band on their leg. We will also, kind of late summer, we're getting ready to start trapping wood ducks. Wood ducks are kind of a resident duck species here. They're typically cavity nesting ducks. They find a hole in a tree and raise their ducklings here rather than going way up north to like the prairie pothole region of the northern United States and Canada to do their reproducting in their wetland pools up there like most waterfowl species do. Wood ducks stay here and produce young here. So we use it's called a rocket net. It's basically just a net that you kind of accordion fold into a big pile. It's got 4 rocket charges on it, and when we have a big pile of cracked corn out there, and then the ducks come up and they're all eating the corn, and you shoot the net over top of them, and then you hurry up and grab them, untangle them out of the net, and put them in a little bit more of a safe storage container, and then again we'll age and sex those ducks and put a band on their leg. We also do mourning dove banding. For that, it's usually during the month of July and August. We just finished a couple weeks ago with that this year. We will trap and band 100 mourning doves. The way we do that, we have a little mesh wire cage trap that's about 2 feet by 2 feet, and it's got funnel doors on it and a little pile of sunflower seeds in the middle. So the doves see the sunflower seed in there, they walk in, and then once they get in there, they can't figure out how to get back out the funnel doors. So again, we age and sex those and put a band on their leg. All this, it provides information after these species are either found dead and the band is recovered, or most of them are harvested by hunters and the band is recovered. There's a phone number or a website that you can get on, and you type the band number in there, and it tells you the date that it was banded and where it was banded and the age that it was banded. So it's used to just track survival of each species, distribution of each species. You can tell how far a species will typically migrate on a year to year. They'll tell you which direction they go when they migrate year to year. You get a lot of really cool data from that, and all of our data that we gather here is compiled at the flyway level, which is several states through the central United States, kind of the corridor that ducks and other migrants follow. That's all data compiled together and used to make harvest limits, set season dates, and lets us know how the species is doing as a whole. If we need to start harvesting more, allowing more harvest, or if we need to back off, and maybe we realize that hunters are killing too many of these animals and their populations are starting to decline. It's basically a different metric that we can use to set those dates and make sure that we're not harming anything on the species level.